Have you ever calculated year-on-year sales percentage growth in Power BI but weren't sure which DAX function to use? Same period last year, parallel period, or custom date logic? In this tutorial, I will show you all three approaches. We will compare the results and I will help you pick the right one for your report. Here you can see that I'm having the yearly sales, and in front of that I'm having the last year sales, on the basis of which I've calculated the year-on-year sales growth. So we will doing the same thing but by using three different logic approaches. So let's go to our data set. So this is our table, and here we are having our order date, and here we are having our sales amount. Now another table which I'm using for this report is the date table. So what I've done is I've created the simple date table by just using the minimum and the maximum order date, which is coming again from the superstores table. So these are the two tables which we will be using in order to build our logics. Let's move on to our report view. Now here we will be creating the logics. I've already created a total sales measure, which you can see over here. Now using this measure, we will be working on the other three logics. Now let's get started with our first logic, which will be using the same period last year. Now what I will do, I will create a new measure. Let's name this as YOY Sales using same period last year. Now I will calculate the total sales, and here I will be using the DAX same period last year. So this is our DAX, and we only need to give it the argument of date. Now our date will be the date which is coming from the date table. I will select that, I will close the bracket, and that's it. You are done. Now let me add this to this below table over here. So you can see that it is working perfectly fine. Now we will create our another measure which will be using parallel period. Let's name this as YOY sales in bracket PP. Now I will use calculate, and here I will call the total sales measure, comma, and here I will be using the parallel period DAX, and here we have to give a total of three arguments. First we have to define the date, so which will be the date column from the date table. Next we have to define the number of intervals, which will be in terms of year, month, or dates, and here we'll be defining it in terms of years, and the number which we'll be using is we will be going 1 year back, and for that we will be using -1, and the interval would be year. So that's it. You can also define it in terms of months or in terms of quarters. Here I will close the bracket and I will hit on enter. Now this measure has also been created. Now let's add this also to this table. So we can see that it is also working perfectly fine. We are getting the same values here also. Now we will be creating our third measure using the date logic. So I will go here, click on these three dots, click on new measure. I will name this measure as YOY Sales Date Logic. And here I will be using variables. Now the first variable which I will be creating will be start date is equal to minimum of date, and this date will be from the date table. Now another variable would be end date, and this will give me the maximum of the selected period, which will the max of date, which is coming from the date table. And here what I will do is I will create another start date which will be of the last year. So for example, if in my current slicer I've selected January 2025, so this start date should give me 1st Jan 2024. I will name it as start date ly is equal to, in order to go 1 year back or 12 months back, what I will be using is, I will be using a DAX date. And here we have to give it two arguments. First one is the start date and the month. So here the start date would be this variable which we have created. Start date. As we are moving backwards, this month interval would be minus. So I will give it minus 12. And here I will be using the same technique to calculate the end date. Here also I will be using date. I will call the end date and I will go 12 months back. And here I also need to take care that whatever month I'm calculating, the last date should be 30 or 30th or 28th of that particular month. So for that, there is also another DAX which is called end of month, EO month. So here we have to give it date and the month. So in month, I will just simply put 0, and this will calculate the end of that particular month which is getting calculated in end date underscore ly. Now I will return our measure, return, calculate total sales. Then I will be using filter and I will be using all, and I will call the date table. And then I will be defining that the date should be greater than equal to start date ly, and the date should be less than equal to end date ly. So this is our logic. Now here what we are doing is, as we have created a relationship between the orders column which is coming from the super source tables and the date column from the date table, we are able to use this date table over here whenever we are calculating the minimum or the maximum. And also the slicer which we are using for this particular dashboard is also coming from the date table. So that's why we're able to give it the argument for minimum and maximum of date column from the date table. And here what is happening, we are calculating the total sales and we are applying this all filter on date table. So it would not affect any other column which is coming from this superstores table. So that is the reason why we are using this another date table. Now I will just click on enter and I will add this new measure into this table which we have created. And here also we can see that it is also giving us the perfect value. And now if you want to create the year-on-year sales growth percentage, we can simply use logic of the current year sales minus the last year sales divided by the last year sales. This will give you the year-on-year sales growth percentage. Now let's analyze only these three logics which we have created, and let me remove this other logics. I will just remove this and remove this logic. So here we can see that we are having our year, the current sales, and the last sales which we have created by using three different logics. Now what happens if the particular business user only wants to see the January sales of all the year? So you can go to the slicer, you can only select the January month, and when you will select that, what you will notice is, you will only notice the changes which is happening in the measure which we have created by using same period last year and the measure which we have created by using the date logic. But the parallel period DAX which we have used in this measure is not working properly, because what is happening, it is calculating the sales amount for the entire last year, because the argument which we have given over here was to go 1 year back and then calculate the entire sales of that particular year. So in this case, it won't be suitable to use this. And if you are also using any month filter, you can go with this same period last year, or you can also go with the date logic which we have created. Actually, when you are using this approach of using the date logic, it gives you more control over the date ranges, and it is perfect for custom fiscal years or dynamic filters. And the same period last year works well with continuous or complete date tables. I would also like to add some extra tips for you. Always use a proper date table whenever you are using any time intelligent functions. Same period last year may fail if there are missing months or dates. Parallel period is a flexible but can shift periods incorrectly if the date hierarchy is broken. And the variable method is best when you need custom detailed state and end periods. And that's how you calculate the year-on-year sales growth in Power BI. Now you know 3 ways to calculate year-over-year growth and when to use each one. If this tutorial helped you, please like this video, subscribe to DataMinds Academy, and comment below which DAX pattern you want me to cover next.